Face to face, hand to hand, film to film.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Film to Film. My name is Iñaki Liñero. I'm here with my good old friend, James Shergan. Hey James, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Are you going to say my name 5 times?
Maybe. I was going to say though, today I was thinking of the song Candyman, doop 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 doop. Hey, Candyman. So yeah, who can take the sunrise, man? Who can sprinkle it with the dew? The Candyman can.
You know, I am not familiar with this song as you are.
Oh man, have you not seen Willy Wonka?
I have, but it's been many years since I've seen it, and I don't have it stuck in my head.
Or what about Malcolm in the Middle? I mean, those are the two references where that song is.
It has likewise been a long time since I've seen Malcolm in the Middle, and my memory of Bryan Cranston is much more familiar as a drug lord than it is a suburban dad.
That's true. That makes sense.
Although he was both actually in Breaking Bad, so there you go.
Oh yeah, that's true. And their son was an idiot in both cases. So.
Wow.
I'm not talking about his physical disability. I'm talking about like he was kind of a prick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, before we get fully derailed on something completely relevant, well, how's your week? What have you watched?
It was good. I watched this film, Candyman, and I also watched earlier today, Candyman 2. So.
Oh, you watched Candyman 2? All right.
Yeah, I just was curious how it was. It does not have a terribly great reputation, and I found it to be okay. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard, it's a trilogy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I heard the third one was particularly bad. So I have yet to see that one. And of course, they have the new Candyman coming out this year, produced by Jordan Peele and directed by Nia DaCosta. So
yep.
That should be interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm excited. I mean, in fact, that is the reason why about the movie that we're talking about for the movie we're talking about today, Candyman.
Yep.
It's been a while since we've talked about classic American horror. Actually, have we talked about a classic American horror?
I think this, and along with Gloria Bell, are our only 2 North American films. Or, well, did we do a Mexican film? No, we've done some Mexican films. American films.
USA. Like the USA.
Yeah.
Thank you for being inclusive, James. I mean, indeed, folks in my culture, and myself included, think of America as being something bigger than the United States, but
I mean, under those terms, we've done a lot of American films.
Yeah, but strictly U.S. American films. I mean, we did more. We've done more. We've done Midsommar. We've done.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We've done Promising Young Woman.
Oh, There you go. Thank you. Oh, no, Promising Young Woman was British. Let me remind you, according to the British Film Awards.
Oh, yes, of course, because all those accents were so British.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyways, back to. But I mean, I think this is like one of the first like classic-ish American films.
It is, yes.
That we've talked about in this podcast. We've referenced tons of American films, but I don't think we've ever talked to one about.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the most popular USA film that we've done on the podcast.
Besides Promising Young Woman, or
okay, fair enough.
Besides the modern film,
Most
besides
classic.
Midsommar, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, the reason
as usual, we're getting derailed by small semantic things.
Indeed.
That is film to film.
Exactly. I mean, if we had a third person, it would be even more fun, right? Because we would be getting derailed even more. But
yeah.
Anyways, so yes, Candyman. I mean, this time it was my pick of films. And to be honest, I had never seen this movie. I knew of it. I knew that it's a classic that I should watch. But yeah, this is. I decided to choose this because the remake is coming out soon, as you mentioned. When is it coming out? Do you know?
It is coming out. I had it open just a moment ago. It is coming out on August 27th, and we're recording this August 6th, so 3 weeks from today.
Oh shit! Okay, so maybe we'll do a follow up with the remake and see what we think about it. Because that one's produced by Jordan Peele. And
Yeah, yeah. And I feel a little bad not giving more credit to the director, Nia DaCosta, but I'm not really familiar with her. So it's easy to give Jordan Peele the big name, but his name alone makes me have some hope that it's going to be of decent quality.
I know. And again, we are on the tangent right now, and I'm going to continue for a little bit. Isn't it amazing though how Jordan Peele went from doing sketch comedy to being like a name for horror and thrillers?
It is. I mean, it's very impressive, I gotta say. I mean, now it's like him, and like you could mention him. He's obviously very different, but like a director like Ari Aster, who did Midsommar, which we were just talking about, and Hereditary, as well as Eggers. What's his name? Robert Eggers, that did The Witch, and
Did
The
they
Lighthouse.
did they also start in like outside?
No. I'm just talking about as sort of like a new class of horror directors that started directing films in like the mid to late 2010s.
Right, and whenever you hear their names, you're like, "Oh, I'm in it. I'm watching this." I mean,
Yeah, exactly. They have good batting averages. Like so far, Jordan Peele has only directed 2 films, but I mean, I think like most people, I think Get Out is better than Us, but I thought they're both pretty high quality films.
indeed, and very enjoyable. I mean, this Candyman remake will, since it's gonna be directed by a different person. I'm curious how that's gonna work out. I mean, I've seen some shows produced by Jordan Peele, like what's it called? Lovecraft Country, and that was pretty good. Jordan Peele likes weird shit. And Candyman actually definitely gives you a lot of material to make some weird shit.
For sure. There's a lot of text here. Yeah, and it's really easy to see why he would be attracted to this material.
I think.
Some very obvious reasons. But we'll get into that, I'm sure, in the podcast.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, anyways, I kind of already mentioned a little bit of my initial impressions of this film. I know you've seen it already once. You just watch it again, but yeah, what are your thoughts about it?
I quite like it. I think it's a pretty impressive film. I think there's a lot of text going on. I think it's a really good visual film. So yeah, I have a very positive opinion about it. What about yourself?
No, I really liked it. I thought visually, the scene setups, cinematography, music, and plot. I mean, everything falls together really well. It definitely has the 90s feel, but considering the certain subject matters that it touches upon, I feel like it was fairly tasteful, especially since it did not. Its director was
British.
It's like British director. It's based on a British book written by a British guy. So it is very impressive.
I mean, the original story, I think, was in Liverpool or something. So it's like literally set in Britain. So they transposed it to Chicago. And I mean, like, I think they did a really good job with it. Yeah,
and what's cool, I don't know if the original story had any racial component to it, but I mean, I think that in the American version, they sort of integrated that very well.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I think the film has aged quite well in a lot of ways, especially considering it's tackling race. And the way that we think about race here in America in 2021 is undoubtedly extremely different than 1992. But in many ways, I think the film holds up pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So anyway, so I haven't jumped into the one sentence summary, so I'll throw this in. I got this from IMDb, so whoever wrote it, well, whatever. It goes as follows: The Candyman, a murderous soul with a hook for a hand, is accidentally summoned by It's accidentally summoned to reality by a skeptic grad student researching the monster's myth.
All right. I'd say that's a pretty good synopsis.
Yeah, yeah.
That sums it up without going too overboard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I looked at the Wikipedia one, and it was like an overly long run-on sentence. So this is much short and concise. So, I mean, yeah. In short, it's the monster. But I mean, yeah, this movie. One thing I liked is I feel like and maybe I'm not 100% sure if it started the whole trope of having a film start with, the teenagers. It's like, ooh, have you heard about this?
And I think that's like a slasher trope, isn't it? I mean, wouldn't that be before this?
No, well, but this style, like, so I'm thinking. So the only two films I can think of with this trope are this one and The Ring.
Oh, really?
The American remake of The Ring. Like starting someone talking about like, ooh, have you heard about this ghost situation? Mm-hmm. Ooh, why don't we try it out? They try it out, and then right afterwards, the
bad shit happens.
Bad shit happens, and that's like sets up the standard for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up The Ring. There might be some interesting similarities. I hadn't thought of that comparison before. I do think they do have done a similar thing in some slasher films. Slasher films are so dime a dozen for me that I struggle to come up with the names of them, but there's definitely like some, as well as John Carpenter's The Fog, where they're sort of talking about like these legends of stuff happening, and then bad stuff happens.
Like right away.
Whether it happens immediately or not, I don't recall exactly. But
right, because
I think it works well in this case because the whole film is sort of about like this myth making and how stories are passed down and told. So I think it fits with Candyman especially well.
Yeah, with folk legends urban legends.
Yeah, urban legends.
So yeah, I mean. One area that I was kind of curious throughout the entire movie was like, I wonder what her thesis is about.
It's a totally different movie, but I couldn't help but like think of this in relation to Midsommar, which is also about like a bunch of like petty academics bickering between themselves about like theses and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was also curious what her thesis was.
Also, what course teaches like urban legend? Because I feel like there are other movies with that sort of like with that setting too, and I'm like, in what undergrad can you take a course on urban legends?
I don't know. Not undergrad that I did, but I majored in electrical engineering, so I got no freaking idea.
I guess maybe critical literature. I don't know.
One of those humanities.
Yeah. But anyways, jumping into this movie, one of the first things that makes this film so attractive, I would say, is the cinematography.
I agree.
The bird's eye view with that tracking camera of Chicago is really beautiful. That put together with Philip Glass's score really creates a tension and the mood for the entire film. I think also Chicago's architecture really helps this film out and on how it looks. There is that shot whenever you have the shot of the University of Illinois. I want to say that's the university where they are.
That's right.
It looks beautiful. It looks amazing from the bird's eye view. From inside, actually, it doesn't look that interesting. But
yeah, I 100% agree. And Like, these shots have become, like, these bird's eye views have become, like, kind of a dime a dozen with drone technology and stuff like that. And this is obviously predates that, but they had a very steady hand, whoever was holding that camera out of the helicopter and taking those shots, because they look great. They look fantastic, all of the bird's eye ones. And I almost feel like one difference that I see in these bird's eye versus like bird's eye that we get now is they almost like pull the camera back another like 100 meters in the air or something, because it felt like they're really like eye in the sky views when we're looking at the University of Illinois, Chicago, as well as like the freeways. But yeah, I agree, and like that plus the Philip Glass score, it just makes this a very sort of very classy feeling horror film that has like these art elements that I think work really well also with sort of Candyman the character too.
Yeah.
Sort of add to that mythos, and it has sort of like this operatic quality to it that I think, if this had like a stereotypical 80s score, I don't think we remember it the same way or even close.
Right, no, definitely. Granted, when it comes to remembering a score, Philip Glass's scores are so repetitive that it's hard to not get it stuck in your head.
Yes. That is the Candyman score I had stuck in my head. Iñaki had Willy Wonka, apparently.
Yeah, unfortunately, sorry, excuse me. Have a bee stuck in my throat. I was recently making out with Candyman. Anyways, I think, generally speaking, I forgot what I was going to say. But in short, beautiful scene, very memorable. From the beginning, we're looking at Chicago streets, as well as just the different locations. Just well done. I think, to your comment about the helicopter, I almost want to say that it might be easier to get that shot with a helicopter than with a drone. Because you're mentioning how high up it is.
Yeah, it's really high.
And helicopters are actually very steady. Like it's apparently like it's like it's common movie trope that helicopters are really shaky and stuff like that. But apparently they're very steady.
Okay.
And I assume that drones, the higher it is, the more wind you have, and with the more wind you have, the higher the harder it is to have that steady shot of the city.
Okay. Well, in that sense, then maybe like I had listened to a podcast before this, the Evolution of Horror podcast, where they're talking about Candyman, and they were talking about how like the drones and stuff had sort of cheapened those shots. But in some ways, I think it actually makes these shots look even better, because it's really rare, I think, to see bird's eye view or like eye of God views that are so high up. And maybe it's because of the reasons you're just talking about, how drones can't get as high. So yeah, I mean, I was pretty impressed with how the shots look.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I mean, that is really high. So I mean, you really have to have a very good, like, a solid drone. I mean, all in all, you know that and when we're using the word cheapens, like, we mean it literally, because renting a helicopter is a lot more expensive than than having a drone.
Yeah.
But I would say this definitely stands out more than other films, and how high it is. But also, again, it's that beautiful use of Chicago. I mean, there's so many movies set in Chicago, and you always have the landscape, that big tower. I never know the name, but that weird black building with the two antennas. But that's so cliche as opposed to this top down view of it, of the city. Now going into the characters, this is kind of
The Willis Tower.
There you go. Yeah.
I think it was called something else at the time too, so a little confusing, but there you go.
Yeah. I mean, you were in Chicago recently, right?
Yeah, I was in there about a month ago, so I actually saw the Willis Tower and the skyline. So yeah, it does a good job. In fact, that made me kind of more excited to rewatch this film, because I think this might be one of the best Chicago films that just showcases like the setting super well.
Mm-hmm.
Like it shows you that skyline, and then you also get like a really nice looking. Well, maybe nice is the wrong adjective to use, but you get a very textured and unique view into sort of like the urbanism and sort of urban gothic decay, which I find to be really fascinating to dive into.
The other thing that's nice about the setting is, I mean, clearly this was shot when it was cold, and it adds to the feel of the film along with the music.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the entire movie, whenever someone is outside, I mean, even in cars, you can see their breath, and it's just, I don't know, it adds to sort of that gray mood that the film has. And one fun thing about watching it now, though, is when they're in the projects, because in all the scenes at the university and whatever, everyone's just like snooty and they dress snooty and with like muted colors, which is actually very similar to what people dress today. But in the projects, you saw those like bright, like jumpsuits with purples and like neon green or whatever, and it was kind of nice to see that in and like all those bright colors in an otherwise very gray city and setting.
Right. Now, I mean, the urban art and the graffiti and stuff really like add a lot of color to the overall scheme.
Yeah.
Which is otherwise, as you said, very gray, especially the academic scenes. It's like the interior academic scenes are not particularly eye-catching or aesthetic in the way that like they film like Cabrini Green and the city in general with like the eye in the sky.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when it comes to people, it's also interesting how like that also sort of is reflected in the people in the sense that all the people in the academic settings are kind of shitty.
Oh yeah, just like Midsommar.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, you got Helen, our white lady protagonist,
Yep.
with her friend Bernie, who appears to be who is African American, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cassie Lemons.
Yeah, Cassie Lemons, and they both are, you know, like they're both writing this working on this weird thesis, and I mean, like, the only likable person, and then you know her husband, who is Trevor, and then like that one weird other professor that looks like a young Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah,
and
I mean Trevor is like one of the all-time asshole husbands.
I know, like, I mean, this is douchebag to
real piece
like
of work.
10 to 11.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm pointing this out is all the characters, besides Bernie, all the characters are like from the academic world are complete assholes and snobs, and they're just not likable people. Like the few students that are shown also not likable, and then all the characters from the projects are actually kind of likable. They're you know, like you got Anne Marie, played by Vanessa Estelle Williams, who's, you know, just a very caring and sweet mother, a little bit protective with her Rottweiler, but you know, you got the kid, I forget his name, Jake. You know,
Jake. Yeah.
You got Jake, the boy, and you know, I don't know, most of the characters except for the dude who completely knocks out Helen.
Yeah, who's also played by the Tony Todd who plays Candyman.
Oh, the dude who knocks out Helen is played by the same actor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
We'll look that up.
We're gonna look that up. Yeah, we're gonna look that up.
Yeah. What about Helen? Did you find Helen to be likable?
Not necessarily. I mean,
okay.
I think she was on the entitled side, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I liked her. She was definitely like a highly flawed person, but I didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say she was dislikable in the same way like her husband was, for example.
Yeah.
Or like the other academics. She clearly also has like like the gender politics of this also play sort of a supporting role too, to the racial politics, where it's like it's pretty clear she has like a chip on her shoulder, compared to like some of the like the male professor Purcell, I think, who is pretty patronizing towards her.
You mean
and, her husband is
young Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah, young Benji, as well as her husband, who's just in general a dirtbag.
I know. I mean, the husband was. I mean, the actor also did a really good job at doing that, just like appearing complete douchebag.
He has a very punchable face.
Indeed, husband Trevor Lyle, portrayed by Xander Berkeley. I've never heard of him before, but he looks a lot like I want to say James Wood. He reminded me of James Wood.
A little younger James Woods.
I mean, yeah, it's the 90s though.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
that's true.
James Wood, like in Videodrome.
Yeah.
Except for and James Wood is a very good example of a person who in real life is completely unlikable.
I would say James Woods is more charismatic than this guy, but yes, I guess I can sort of see how you go there.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the characters were all the academic characters were all pretty dislikable.
Yeah, I mean, like Bernie is one of the better ones, or Bernadette, portrayed by, you said Kathy Lemon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's like the only smart character, if you will. Like, you know, they're going to the project. She comes in armed. Like, I love this scene, like where she, you know, you see her purse and it's like a fucking taser and like pepper spray, and she's like, "And we'll look like cops. We're gonna get fucked," you know, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's like a certain naiveness to Virginia Madsen's character Helen.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly there. I mean, it's also seems like she might have some sort of a white savior thing going on.
Oh yeah.
For herself. And I don't know. I thought that was depicted fairly well. Like, or honestly.
Sure. No. Like I think so too. I agree.
Her arrogance comes off. Yeah, I mean, her character certainly has some arrogance to her.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is pretty clear.
No, I agree, and I mean, and Helen grows on you. That's why I wasn't saying that she's like, I guess it's not like she's unlikable, but she starts off to me coming off a little bit, you know, entitled, but she grows on you. She gets better, especially after she's like being interned at the hospital. Like, you start liking him more.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, let's go a little bit on to certain themes, if you will. So we got the class/race theme in this film.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite interesting in the sense that, I mean, even they sort of, you know, set it up with the building where Helen lives, which apparently was supposed to be a projects, but they were on the other side of the train tracks. And that sets up the concept of like, oh, you know, one side of the tracks is like poor black people live, and then the other side is like the white and few black rich people or wealthy people. And yeah, that is definitely probably the theme that jumps out the most out at you in the film, and it's interesting because like that makes it feel like super Chicago, so it's almost unbelievable that this was originally set in like Liverpool, but supposedly like the director Bernard Rose visited Chicago and was like so struck by sort of the racial dynamics and how segregated it was, that he was inspired to set it there, and supposedly Cabrini Green also was like the project itself was located in a fairly affluent area, and they just sort of put this big housing project in the middle of it, so surrounding it, you don't have to go too far to get to like nicer areas or nicer things going on, or more affluent stuff. So I thought that was also interesting, just the sense that like and you know, you and I both live in cities, and so I think for me at least, sort of that urban appeal, urbanism certainly has more of an appeal to me than like seeing a slasher set in like
like a summer camp or something like that. So like having sort of like those interesting dynamics where you're in like this sort of very I don't know, you're like here in Seattle, you're in like an area that has like a homeless camp or something like that, and you go a few blocks and then you're at like a very nice building or whatever. So I don't know. I thought that dynamic was captured fairly well.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree how, like the few things setting apart like one building to another, even though they're literally the same, the building design, was how much care was placed inside, inside. It's like, oh, we're selling this to affluent people. Okay, we're gonna put nice walls and whatnot. Oh, we're selling this to or we're selling this to like poor black folks. We're just gonna do a shit job.
Cheapest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a great point. I think that's well captured, and sort of like it shows you that Helen lives in a very similar building in some ways, but she has this great view.
Mm-hmm.
Her apartment looks great. It's well lit, and then you see sort of the contrast.
Exactly.
And like Anne Marie clearly put some love into her home too, but you could just see from like the hallways and stuff, just littered with graffiti and stuff like that. That like this is you could see why what's her name, Bernadette would bring a taser to that area.
Right, exactly. And I mean, yeah, that's the other. That's great. We're jumping to the next part, which is like Anne Marie. Her character, her house, everything. It shows how maybe in a subtle or actually not very subtle way talks about how we got the stereotypes of people and then the actual reality, right? Anne Marie's, the stereotype is the projects it's a shitty place. Everything looks shitty. But then, you got Anne Marie's house and she's clearly put a lot of effort to make her house look to be nice, her apartment within the projects. I mean, from the first time you see her, she's wearing, I don't know if she's a nurse or she is cleaning person. I'm not sure, but I mean, like, she really cares about having a good life, trying to have a good decent life, and with the cards that are given to her, from the little that you see, and then when she talks to them, straight up pointing out like, oh, why are you guys here? You academics, why are you guys here? To see how shitty we live, to see how we're all gangbangers and like drug dealers. I'm here because I'm here to survive. I'm here to take care of my child. And it is true. Like, I mean, it is touching upon something that I feel like even happens today, which is sort of like the misery tour.
Yeah, poverty porn.
Yeah, exactly. Folks just going there. It's like, oh, I just want to see poor people, and it's like, no, actually, probably most people who live here are normal people, normal, hardworking people who want to be, who want to have the American dream.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I thought, the more we talk about it, the more I realized that it was quite a well thought out touch to make her apartment actually quite nice. Not a bad place. It's just the building itself and the surrounding areas that are not in great condition.
Yeah. Although, but it makes you wonder though, like I mean, they don't show you other apartments, but who knows? Maybe all the other apartments are nice. They're not that bad looking inside, and it's just like.
Well, we do see the apartment where the crime had happened. That Helen starts walking through.
Right, but
that's uninhabited. So I mean,
it's not exactly.
Your point's well taken. Yeah.
It's abandoned. It's a former crime scene.
Yeah.
There's literally blood in this dirty ass bathtub, like still there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's sort of the second part of the this class race story is the abandonment, right? I mean, all you need is for someone to care, right? Like that to take care of the place, and then the place will look nice. But no one's there. Like the government is not there. The local government's not there. I mean, the police, right? So one of the first stories that you hear, we don't get to see this scene, right? But they tell you about the woman who's brutally killed by Candyman, and Candyman kills her child too, and she calls the cops. They never came. The neighbor called the cops. They never came, right?
Yeah.
And once they came, it became like a huge media news, and then everyone left and forgot about it.
Right.
And cops never tried to search for a killer until the nice white lady Helen gets hit by someone.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that disparity is spelt out. I mean, like that's literally spoken as soon as the white lady gets assaulted, then the cops get on it and they make an arrest very quickly.
Yeah, and she's like, but why couldn't you use the child? This kid already knew about this dude. Like, why couldn't you ask him? And he's like, because we got you.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're talking about a message that feeds pretty clearly into like literally spoken out, like the Black Lives Matter message, then I mean that's a pretty clear one.
Yeah, and indeed, in a way that's a very forward looking, if you will. And
yeah, and I think it's illustrated in a way that's like not too on the nose, but also it's not subtle either. No, so I think most people will pick up on that. Certainly in the 2021 context, I think people would. So I thought that was well handled, and I think that part has aged fairly well, at least from my lens. Maybe some people will disagree.
No, I agree. And then there's, of course, the other racial story would be issue would be the Candyman's backstory, right?
Yeah.
Son of a slave, an artist who, like many black folks in that era, had a relationship with a white girl. And got lynched. Go well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, worse than lynched. I mean, he had his hand chopped off and was bitten to death by bees. I mean, yeah.
And then he was burned or something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing they do actually show in the sequels. They show a bit more of that. And it is pretty horrific to watch.
I mean, lynching was actually almost as horrific as that. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to get into debating the horrificness of that.
Yeah, yes, let's put it this way. They were all fucked up.
It is quite bad.
Yeah.
I agree.
Form of, yeah. Anyways, I mean, the whole point is, like that's another thing that it sort of put up.
Yeah. And like the interracial marriage of it as well. It's like, even though he's like Candyman, it sounds like was an aristocrat and like a pretty well-educated, probably fairly wealthy guy. Like in the end,
was he though?
The race. I mean, like certainly for a black person in 1890, it sounded like the way that they tell the story at least.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know. You could skew that depending on what you believe is the backstory. You could skew it either way as being like, yeah, it's like he was a rich guy, but in the end, the skin of his the color of his skin ran deeper in the sense that he was treated that way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I understood it as him being like highly educated, well-respected man. The richness, I didn't necessarily think of it, but I mean, he was
fair enough.
Respected until the color of the skin mattered.
Yes, and then he was just a black man.
Exactly. But yeah, and I mean that's one of the more subtle points that areas where this film was, and perhaps because the director didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, which is fair enough. I don't know that I would know how to deal with that either.
Which is why I'm so excited to see what is done.
Yeah.
For the remake.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so besides that, going into a little bit more into the actual set pieces in the film, or is there any other notable, broad themes?
I'll scan my notes and I'll let you know. But I think you brought up everything that at least comes to my mind, at least.
All right. So we have our opening scene. I must actually, before that, I'm going to say, like, the kills here are actually fairly tame in this first film. Perhaps we've been watching
Yeah.
too many giallo films, and at this point,
Yeah, it's hard to beat the Italians in the 70s and the 80s. Like one of the podcasts I was listening to was like, "Oh yeah, this film showed a lot of skin." I was like, "Really?"
I mean, it does.
It does for its era and where it was made, but compared to an Italian 1970s film, it doesn't have much on it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
I thought the kills were good. For the most part, I thought they were well done. I thought for me one of the most jarring times, and I do like how they did it, is the moment where you kind of cut from the first half of the film to the second half.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the parking garage, and then Tony Todd playing Candyman says her name, Helen. And then we go, and she's like, all of a sudden she's in Anne Marie's apartment. There's a freaking severed dog head, and the baby is missing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the set piece is amazing, and also it's really great for the plot. Like plot wise, is amazing too, right? You got this is the part where I was not expecting the movie was gonna go. I did not expect the movie dealing with one. I did not think they were going to kill the animal. Killing a dog is always a cruel thing to do in films.
It's not a very popular thing to do either.
I know, but having the decapitated dog, the cleaver, the baby missing, and this woman full of blood. I just love how like. As soon as you have that and her grabbing the cleaver, the cops arrive.
Yeah, it's well done. I mean, and that continues to happen to Helen throughout the second half of the film, as she's put in these situations where she's basically framed by Candyman.
I know.
Repeatedly. But yeah, it was a very well executed scene, and I personally liked how the scene. It isn't the goriest film. But they do show a fair bit of gore on that scene at least.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, Helen straight up like cuts Anne Marie in that scene, and you actually get to see a little bit of that cut, almost as an Italian giallo. So no, for sure. I guess I was just thinking because we've gotten accustomed to seeing, like more graphic kills, especially because I mean, some of the kills are done off camera, and what you see is the aftermath. So with this one, for example, we don't get to see the dog being killed. I don't think I wanted to see it.
Yeah. Nor did I. I like the way they did it. I like the directorial choice they chose there.
And the same goes when with the death of Bernie.
Yeah, they choose not to show it. In fact, it's very restrained in some sense there. Like if it's Argento's like showing you the whole shebang, showing it. I don't know if they use the phrase in this film, but they use it in the second film, from groin to gullet, which is a pretty horrific way to get it. So yeah, they don't necessarily show them in the full graphic glory here
until the doctor.
Yes, the doctor gets it good.
Yeah, the doctor gets it good, and that's the first time you because before you're not sure if Candyman is trying to frame her, but with the doctor he straight up like
cuts her loose.
Were you expecting that? The first time you watched it, like were you expecting?
No, I don't think I was.
Yeah, no. It was probably one of the funnest jump scares I've had. I guess not a jump scare because it is a full scare with Candyman. But when she goes, like trying to prove the doctor that Candyman exists, does the Candyman 5 times, and you think he's just gonna show up. You don't think it's gonna, or you think nothing is gonna happen. Those are the two things that were in my head. I did not expect Candyman just straight up stabbing the doctor from the back and then ripping him up, like ripping his entire back.
Yeah. It helps that Tony Todd is a tall, imposing dude too.
I know. I mean, let's talk about Tony Todd. again, I think we're in disagreement whether I'm pretty sure he's not the guy who punched her, and the reason why is because if there was one actor I knew of this movie was Tony Todd.
Uh-huh.
And when the other guy shows up and he's like, "I am Candyman," I'm like, "No, that's not Tony Todd."
Okay. I will try to look that up while you talk.
Sure. Anyways, Tony Todd, portrays the character really well. I mean, he's comes off like well dressed, like very well spoken. The sound editing makes it so when he talks, you can hear him from everywhere. I do have a little bit of an issue with that in that sometimes it was hard to understand what he was saying, but in general, still very just a very imposing actor and character.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't exactly have like he's probably on screen for maybe 20 minutes at most, but like he makes the most of that. He's very physical. I looked up his height. He's 6'5", so he's really tall. And his voice, as you said, is very it works really well. And I don't know if they like deliberately deepened it or anything like that, but it's very deep, and he strikes the exact right tone, I think, for the character too. It's just kind of a joy to hear him speak. So I like Tony Todd. I think he's good in the role.
Yeah, definitely. I also like the ghost design. Just having that, being able to see his ribs just filled with bees gives a very terrifying view. I don't know, like just it's a very terrifying image.
Yeah, I can't find it. So if you can find out who the Candyman gang leader was, but I actually think it was Tony Todd, but I could be wrong. But that's what I remember from the film.
But
I let me talk about it a little bit though. I think it's an interesting choice to have that too, but because it sort of shows you the power that these myths make in sort of real life too. Even like in this case, the myth is actually real. But like someone like the gang member is using the Candyman myth for his own will to sort of like strike fear into the residents of Cabrini Green and like be an actual I don't know what he's doing, if he's selling drugs or whatever, but he's actually using the myth to his advantage as sort of a strategic tactic. So I think it shows that other aspect of myth making, which I thought was kind of added an additional layer that I enjoyed in the film.
Yeah, no, I agree. It both makes it feel more real and less real. I do love the child too. Actually, we're gonna talk for a second about about Jake.
Yeah.
And when it comes to child actors, I know we tend to be critical, and this kid probably not the best child actor, but effective and very charismatic. What do you think?
Yeah, I had no issue with him, which for a child actor means it's a plus if he didn't draw like extraneous attention to himself. I don't come with high expectations for child actors. He didn't strike me as particularly great, but he wasn't bad either, so I'd consider that to be good.
Yeah. I don't know. I enjoyed his character. I enjoyed how it's just like, whoa, the Candyman. Before they go on like burn down they try to burn Candyman down. I'm curious now that we think about the book, right? Because this film is based not a book, but in a story within a book, like as you're mentioning in England. I'm curious whether or not they have like similar social situations.
So it was supposedly I was just reading this about segregation and the culture of poor urban areas in Liverpool.
Right.
So Yes, but the racial aspect would certainly be different, I'd imagine.
Right, but I am curious on the because I don't know if you ever like saw this video that had gone viral like probably 10, 12 years ago, actually more, probably like 15 years ago. So not like, it was just like all over the news, which was how like in like some poor neighborhood, someone claimed to see a leprechaun. And everyone freaked out about it, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I saw a leprechaun." I mean, there was a Dave Chappelle episode that literally made fun of that too. Like, the reason I pointed out is like, at that moment, a lot of people talked about like race. Like racist people would say like, "Oh yeah, look at ignorant black people or whatever," like because racist people are racist, and I'm curious if, it's not so much of a race thing and more of a class thing, right? Like the quick to believe on urban legends. Like if someone in that poor neighborhood in Liverpool were like, "Oh yeah, Candyman, he comes out and kill you," and then the folks are like, "Oh shit, Candyman."
Right. Yeah. I mean, like literally, the first half could have played that way. Like if it had just ended there with like the drug person getting arrested from Virginia or Helen's testimony, then it would have been like, oh yeah, Candyman's not real, and that's how it played out. The poor people were stupid, and they believed this myth that wasn't true. But it turns out the poor people are correct about it, and
oh yeah, of course.
The white academics are not.
Right. No, the white academics are in the wrong. Candyman is very real. And to be honest,
and I mean, like even at the end where like there's like Helen's funeral and like they come, it's like they have a greater understanding of actually what happened in the situation than like Trevor and Trevor's new girlfriend. I'm sorry I interrupted you. What
no. That's fine. Actually, the last thing you mentioned does make me wonder when it comes to this whole messaging about whether or not she ends up becoming a white savior.
In some ways, she does with the baby, and you could say that would have been done differently in 2021. I would probably agree with that. But I don't think it's enough to.
No, I mean not to
criticize. There are certainly some things that I think would probably be done a little differently. It doesn't detract too much for me, at least.
Right.
I'll just speak from my perspective.
No, of course. And I mean, I asked that in the sense of thinking more in like I mean, again, early 90s, white savior was the norm in films, Dancing with 100%, Wolf,
yeah.
etc. And I mean, like even more recently, we have like white saviors with The Help, right?
Yeah, which I actually have not seen, but yes.
I mean, neither, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the classic white savior film of the last decade, I think.
Yeah. So the fact that here you have it as well, but in a very subtle manner, it's kind of nice.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
I mean, it's considering the 90s.
Yeah.
I wonder how this film would have been if it was directed by Spike Lee.
Probably very different. I mean, I believe that the new director of Candyman is black, so I am curious to see what way they go on this new one, especially because Candyman, the original, is so explicitly about race on its own that I'll be interested to see what sort of angle they take.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, so I guess another thing maybe to bring up would be the scene where what were Candyman's objectives with Helen?
I mean, it was the line that gets remembered from the film is "Be my victim."
Right. That's a
Yeah,
tagline.
yeah. But it's sort of interesting because like he seems to want her to believe and submit to that in a certain way. So it's like the belief is obviously very important to myth making. So I thought the ideas were kind of interesting there. I don't know if it makes sense. I think Nathaniel might call on and complain about that in sort of like a literal making sense of the plot. Because I don't know that his motives are 100% clear. Because it seems like there's also some sort of romantic angle playing there. Where there's sort of like obviously Candyman was originally lynched or killed because of the interracial marriage or interracial romance, and so that we have another white lady here, and Candyman is asking her to sort of be his victim in a way that is not unromantic. So it sort of has that. I don't know if ambiguity is the right word there, but it has some of that going on. I don't know if it's totally clear. I don't know. What was your take on it?
Yeah, no, I was sort of wondering about that as well. I mean, I was thinking of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one by Coppola. The like having the monster, if you will, be in love with the reincarnation, if you of the woman that he basically of his girlfriend or his lover. And I was curious, maybe she was sort of the reincarnation to him. She was the reincarnation of the woman he was with prior to being killed.
It hints at that, doesn't it? Bram Stoker's Dracula, also 1992. So there you go. But yeah, it's interesting you bring up that film too, because in some of the readings I did on this film too, Bernard Rose talked about making Candyman almost like a vampiric Dracula-like figure, and if he had been given a chance to do a sequel, he would have explored that even more. So it is interesting because almost like the way he has sort of like that like 19th century almost cape to him too.
Oh yeah,
and the way he like lurks in the shadows. There's certainly a bit of Dracula in him, in his DNA.
Yeah, I mean he's a gentleman. He's a sophisticated gentleman from the 1800s.
Yeah, he's a tragic
backstory, and then he's more of a. I haven't seen the other Candyman films. I hear that they're more almost closer to a slasher than this like suave ghost figure, because I mean he's very suave.
Yeah. A bit. I think this film definitely is the classiest of them all. I think it looks the best. The Philip Glass score is in the sequel as well. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it is a little more slasher-ish in some ways.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. Anyways, that's kind of what I thought. Maybe that she had like some sort of more mythical connection with Candyman than. And it was almost fate.
Yeah, they tried to kind of go that way in the sequel.
Okay.
I think to somewhat mixed results. But yeah, it definitely hints at that. But I kind of like how they don't necessarily spell it out all the way. For me, like, I don't know, like flirting with those bigger ideas and showing it visually in the way they do, I think is good enough for myself at least.
I know for sure, and I mean it gives you that partly horrific scene where he kind of kisses her or makes out with her or just puts his mouth on her mouth while there's a whole bunch of bees.
Yeah, and those are real bees too.
Were they? But
they were.
But that was a dummy though, right?
No, I think they're real. I think they both got multiple bee stings. I forget what they did. I had heard about this. I think I listened to a podcast back when I originally saw the film, and I think they had like really young bees or something that hadn't yet developed their stingers. So they had a certain way they were doing it. I mean, that's another charm of like these films too, is like we're sort of for these days you probably do that mostly with CG. But this looks really good. And I think part of that is because they're doing a lot of stuff practically still.
So, all right. So I do believe I do believe when they're talking or whatever, and you have all the bees on their face. I do believe you on that. But there's a scene where he opens his mouth and just a shit ton of bees come out of his mouth. I don't think that would be physically possible to do, to shove bees down the throat and then have them come out. And that's a moment where I thought maybe in that instant they might have had like an animatronic, because I mean. I agree with you. It's not, obviously you cannot do it with CG. You couldn't have done it then in the 90s, but I do believe that it was probably some sort of animatronic for just that one shot.
Okay, well, here we go. I'm doing some live research here. The film used more than 200,000 real honeybees throughout the film. The crew wore bodysuits to be protected from stings, although all of them faced at least one sting. Mm-hmm. Todd negotiated a bonus of $1,000 for each of the bee stings that he got during filming. So he got 23. In shooting the film's climax, where the Candyman sends 500 bees into Helen's face, he first had the bees placed in his mouth by using a protective mouthpiece to avoid as many stings as possible. Gary had to use freshly hatched, non-stinging, and non-flying bees for the scene, as Madsen was very allergic to stings. It took half an hour for all of the bees to get into Todd's mouth, and he recalled being tranced out when he let all of the bees out of his mouth. Bros also used hypnosis in his movie to work around when he saw the cliche of excessive screaming in the horror films. Okay, we're off of the bees now. So
wow.
Yeah, it makes it even more impressive. But yes, they went pretty all in on the bees.
Wow. Okay. I think they did more than they needed. Like they could have used they could have literally have, I mean, in the 80s you already had the animatronics technology for having a human realistic dummy, like to do that instead of putting your actors in fucking danger.
Yeah. Well, I think Tony Todd got 23 bee stings from this film. I think that's more bee stings than he had minutes in this film.
I know, Jesus.
But I mean, these reasons and doing stuff practically is a reason why it looks so great. It's like building the set of like that bonfire and stuff. I mean, like that looks fantastic.
Oh no,
and
for
some
sure.
of the urban design, like this is some of like I think the best set design of films in the 90s that I can think of.
Yeah, no, and the double. I'm assuming the use of double when Helen is burning because she's burning.
Yeah. That I don't know. Yeah.
Because if not, then Virginia Madsen, fucking.
Deserves,
like. She's like the Tom Cruise of the 90s.
Yeah. Getting burned. I assume that was something else. They did that some other way. But yeah, the fire looks great too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, speak about the fire, that last, set piece with the baby in that pile of just garbage. It's just very claustrophobic. And at the same time, it's very dreading. Like I thought she was going to die. And she did, but I'm saying I thought she was going to die inside with the baby.
It certainly seems like it. Yeah, it's really well done. Like the set pieces in this film are amazing to look at. Like everything in Cabrini Green, I think, was just super impressive.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, I'm just still thinking about the bees.
Yeah, bees.
Like I know that there are. I knew that there were real bees, and I knew that when he would show his chest or something else, like those were real, and they were all over for sure. Because I've seen videos of like bee trainers that like do that, like they put some pheromone on your body, and bees just kind of like go in, like they go on your body, and that's commonly used. But to go the extra level of putting them in the mouth,
yeah, that's something.
Yeah. That's I wonder if any animal got hurt in the. Well, I guess all the bees that at least 26 of them died.
23 or probably more, because it sounds like all the crew got stung a bunch. So
So, so there were animals hurt in making of this
Yeah.
film.
Bees.
Bees. They're animals. Yeah. You know, for a nice film, they did use a couple of interesting compositions. I mean, now that we're going more into technical stuff, there were the scenes where you would see the bees flying around the Willis Tower. You said it was the name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that stuff doesn't look quite so good.
No.
In my opinion, I mean that's the reason like we're not seeing CG on like the more close and stuff. So yeah, I mean
was that CG or do you think that was a composition shot, like of bees just flying placed over the?
I don't know, but it wasn't done like literally in that way. So
it doesn't look good. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look that good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, same with the animation they put when the fire Candyman is burning, and the bees are burning with them, and they just sort of put a little like animation above the fire. It looks kind of fake, but it has that 90s charm. Because I don't think that's CG either. I think that's like hand drawn.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. Everything that they did super practically, I think, looks great, and the other stuff it's dated in a way that. Yeah, it doesn't look quite so good.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, the best kill in this film. Is it
Trevor?
Is the last one?
You know, Trevor is the most satisfying one because he's such a dirtbag. And I kind of like how they do the last one too, in the sense that like they show him kind of in a bad relationship too with his grad student girlfriend, and and then Helen. And then he says her name 5 times, and then
Yep,
that's the end. Yeah,
I really liked it. I mean, there's so many levels, right? One is he clearly, because Helen died, fucking saving a child, and you know he's with the student, and he realizes shit, Helen was like so much better.
Yeah,
and he's just crying. And doing the Helen, plus two more times, and you get to see his whole body just completely being cut open. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's the most like slasher. Oh, this is a bad person, and we get to see them die. Yeah, and it's kind of joyous in a certain way. Kill that we get.
Yeah, it was almost like the end of the Giallo films when you see the gruesome way that the bad guy's dying, and it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Decapitated by an elevator or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then seeing his body.
Yeah.
I also love how after he dies, his new girlfriend finds him while she's holding a fucking cleaver or a giant knife.
Yep. They keep it up with that. Yeah. I like that too.
Now I know you've seen the sequels. Or one of the sequels. Since I haven't, one thing I will point out is I think this was a very well-rounded film. There was, I mean, you could have had a sequel, although I would have thought the sequel would have been Helen.
It almost hints more towards that than it does a Candyman sequel.
Yeah. So I think this is just a very well-rounded film. I almost don't want to watch the sequels to sort of lower the quality of this. How have you felt about it?
You know, I'm generally someone that's pretty forgiving towards sequels and remakes because I think at worst they are shitty and they generate more attention and make you appreciate the original more. The sequel wasn't great. It wasn't bad either. So I'm okay. I'm glad I'm curious just to see what they do with it. Maybe the new one in 2021 isn't going to be good. I don't know. But I am very curious to see where it goes. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I hope they take some risks on it too. I hope it's just not, standard play 2021 stuff. So we'll be interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I have... Unfortunately, I have very high hopes. The reason I say unfortunately is because,
Yeah,
I tend to...
You don't want to get let down.
Exactly. I tend to go to films with low hopes, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I do agree with you in part. I mean, for me, sequels can lower the quality of a film, especially if a sequel tries to retroactively change things from the original.
Yeah.
Remakes, if I hear it's bad, I'm just not gonna watch it, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that perspective. I think I kind of have a minority view in the sequel and remake category of stuff. But yeah, I'm okay with. I mean, like I think a lot of like The Thing was a remake, for instance. Like sometimes if the remake is good enough, it just becomes its own thing.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, no, I'm not against against remakes or sequels at all.
Just bad ones.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna. Usually when a remake or a sequel comes out, I wait a week.
Yeah.
To see if I want to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would hope for whenever you're trying to do a sequel or a remake is that you try to bring something new to the table. You don't just try to rehash everything.
Exactly.
So it's like one of the reasons I like The Dark Knight Returns, even though I think it's a very flawed film, is that I think it does have some interesting things that it brings to the table, even though it's messy and maybe not that great.
Right, and like Halloween 4 through
7
or whatever,
yeah.
where it's just the same shit with a little bit of nonsense add to it. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think we're on the same boat. I mean, I am, as before. I'm excited for this remake, so I really want to see it. And right now, I think that the original is a great film.
I do too. Yeah, I think it's probably one of the best horror films of the '90s, which was not a great decade for horror films.
Strong statement there.
Well, I mean, '90s is not exactly known for super great horror films, but like I would personally, I like this film more than Scream, which is probably considered a lot of people's favorite '90s horror film.
Well, Scream is more of a horror film study.
Yeah, it's like a meta slasher, basically.
So I don't compare. I mean, the only films that I would compare Scream with are like other films like Cabin in the Woods or something else. Mm-hmm. For me, Scream is a horror, but it's not.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, this one is just straight up horror. I'm gonna try to review what other '90s horror there are because yeah, I think you might be right, and it really annoys me.
I mean, there's some stuff that is borderline horror that I like better. Like Seven, I think, is borderline horror, and Silence of the Lambs, and those films I would probably put a little above Candyman.
Right.
So, but it depends kind of if you put those into the pure horror category or not.
Yeah, those are difficult. Anyways, what would you rate Candyman?
I would give it a 8.5. Yeah.
Yep, I think I agree with that. 8.5.
Yeah.
Very good movie. Who won?
Lots of good choices here. Like honestly, you could give it to Bernard Rose, the director, or you could give it to. Man, yeah, I'll give it to. I'll give it to Virginia Madsen. I thought she was good as Helen. I thought she carried the film. She's a very engaging presence throughout the whole film, and it's a good year for her and her brother Michael Madsen, who was in Reservoir Dogs that year, chopping off some ears.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So good year for the Madsens. So yeah, I think it's a really good performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was just looking up who would have been cast. One of their choices for this role would have been Sandra Bullock, and talk about a very different film.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I agree with you. Helen Lyle was. I mean, Virginia Madsen did an amazing job going from this. I don't know, snobby, but like very very well entitled grad student or professor, whatever, to this crazy woman Like, like for example, when she shows up back in the house when her husband, not even in just 1 month only, like less than a month, he's already moved in, like has his new girlfriend move in.
And pretty clearly he was already cheating on her
Oh,
too.
100%.
Yeah, so he's just like an all-time scummy husband.
Yeah, and seeing just like all the emotions that Virginia Madsen just shows right there, between anger, almost revenge. Like at some moment, like you think she's just gonna say Candyman 5 times. Like
Yeah.
I had a feeling because like she's like straight up like looking, and you feel like, oh shit, she's gonna the Candyman. To then almost just very vulnerable, like telling him like you are where all I had, like all of that. Just very good performance.
Yeah.
So well given to her. Yeah, for me, I'm struggling because she's a really good choice. I think Tony Todd is very good for his presence, even though it's just such a, but he's not there very much.
Yeah, it's true. You could make the case that like this helped to make his career a lot.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. I was torn between those two and the Bernard Rose, the director.
Well, I mean, he's been in other films afterwards,
like Final Destination and stuff. But yeah.
And Night of the Living Dead, in the remake.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I want to say I'll give it to Chicago. No, just kidding. That's a bullshit answer.
I think you could legitimately make the case for Chicago. Like it's a really good Chicago movie.
You know what? Yeah. Fuck it. Yeah, I'll give it to. It's gonna be a tie between Chicago and Bernard Rose on doing such a good job at. Bernard Rose and Clive Barker, who's the other writer, doing such a good job at integrating everything together.
Yeah. Okay, so you're giving it to a bunch of people. I did want to say a couple words on Clive Barker because he's a pretty well-known guy too. Mm-hmm. He's the person that like brought Hellraiser as well as Nightbreed there, and he's well-known as a writer. Interesting guy. For me personally, I kind of like this because it's a sort of an amalgamation of his work as well as Bernard Rose. Mm-hmm. The thing that rubs me slightly off with a lot of Clive Barker's work is that I'm not as into the world building as something like Hellraiser or Nightbreed as he is, and so this film kind of strikes this interesting mix of being more grounded as well as combining some of those elements into the Candyman mythology and character. So and he also is like, you can sort of see where some of the weird lines come from.
Yeah.
Like there's some very interesting stuff like "Be my victim" and stuff like that. It's almost like you can see those lines being spoken in Hellraiser or something like that. And I kind of like some of those elements. And this film does a good job of not going too heavy into all of them. In the way that like, I don't know, Hellraiser or something like that doesn't quite do it for me in the same way that this film does.
I completely agree. I mean, I think I'm on the minority, and I might get some haters, but I only watched the Hellraiser one, and I did not like it. I thought it was boring. I thought it was boring and convoluted. So I love the fact that this one, between Barker and Rose, did just such a good job at like together to form this film.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason I'm giving it to all three of them is because I think without Chicago, I don't think this would have worked out the same way. And without Rose, definitely this would have been a completely different movie. And without Barker, this also would have been a completely different movie.
Yeah. I mean, this film, I think more than most that we brought on, feels like a very collaborative effort that was like worked super well in terms of bringing everyone together. Because without it, and you didn't even mention Madsen and Tony Todd.
Of course.
Without them, this is like totally different too. So it's like if you don't have like these 5 different things go right, then the film is probably not nearly as good as it is.
I agree. All right. I think that's it for me. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, I mean, yeah, I think it's a really good film. I think it looks great. I love the urban art and stuff. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
choosing a sort of like tenement building is a great idea.
Indeed. Love the graffiti art.
Yeah, no, it looks great.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, there we go. I highly recommend this movie for the folks who are planning to watch the remake. I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe watch it beforehand, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing, if they're just remaking it or if they're taking it a different way. It might be interesting if we do bring the remake on. We might have to do what you recommended, where we wait a week after it's released and see what people think of it, and then maybe go and see it and talk about it afterwards.
No, I think this one we're going to have to watch it. I'm going to watch it, I think.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends on...
If it gets really bad reviews, I imagine you won't.
I mean, then I'll wait and then maybe watch. In short, like, probably it's going to be, what, $30 on streaming?
Yeah.
So...
Or go to the theater.
Oh, yeah, I guess I could see it in the theaters, yeah.
I was thinking more theater, but yeah.
Yeah, depending on whether or not it's open.
True.
Depending on whether we have moved back, some.
Yeah.
But assuming things are like now, then yeah, probably theater. Anyways, if people have thoughts, if people have comments, we got an email address. You know that, James?
What?
Yeah, we have an email address. It's zafilm2film@gmail.com, and the 2 is with the number 2. So if people have been writing to the wrong place, don't.
Sorry. Yeah.
And then we also have a Twitter account, which is, and I want to say it's @CAFilm2Film.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, same thing.
With the number 2.
Yep.
So if you have ideas of films, or if I got something wrong, because I've said a lot of things today, you can always also tell us.
Yeah, you can live fact check us.
Yeah.
Or not live fact check us.
Yeah. I'm just saying that because I don't think how often have we been hit by on either of those two mediums.
We've never been hit over fact checking, so that means we must be 100% correct on all of our facts.
There you go. We're
right 100% of the time.
Yeah. But yeah, if there are any inner Nathaniels out there,
Yeah.
you're always welcome to.
Or the actual Nathaniel.
Anyways, all right. I'm getting derailed. I hope everyone has a good night when you're listening to this, or good morning, good day.
Yeah. We'll see you all next time.
See you next time. Be